again, a very big welcome to each one into the sanctuary tonight. If there's anybody with us for the first time, we're very honored that you would come and be here with us to celebrate this very super special time with us all. And I know that we will find our way back to our seats any minute now. I'm not drawing attention to any people at all who are causing the wonderful diversion here. But I have to say this, that it is so much of an honor to have Dr. Frank and to have Dr. Anita and the family with us here tonight. It just would not be Christmas Eve without these glorious people in our company, in our midst. We are so honored that they're with us now. And Christine, look at her, grown up, and William too, and Laurie, the mom, ever faithful. Laurie never lets us down on the Family Fun Fest Sunday. She's always there no matter what. And sometimes she has to do cartwheels to be here, but she does it. She does it. So it's beautiful to have you with us here. And so here it is, Christmas again, with us already. And it's a celebration that's been celebrated since time immemorial. Christmas has always been a celebration. But way back in the beginning, it wasn't called Christmas. It was the celebration of the diminishing of darkness and the expansion of light. It was the celebration of wonderful sense of hope and renewal and newness because of the warmth of the sun and its journey back with all that it would bring with it of the promise of life. And so for Christians, of course, that promise and that radiance and that light is centered around the wonderful master teacher Jesus, who is celebrated as Emmanuel, God with us. And the beauty and grace of that is that it's a universal principle that the master teacher Jesus had to present to us all and share with us all. And he was the one that said, you too are Emmanuel, God with us. You too can do what I have done, achieve what I have achieved, and accomplish what I have accomplished, because it is within you, the Father, the power, the presence of life itself is indeed within you, and you too can experience what I have experienced, provided, of course, you achieve the high state of consciousness that he did. That's all we have to do. Achieve the same consciousness, the Buddha mind, the Christ consciousness. And remember, Christ has existed since the beginning. It's a universal principle, and it belongs to everybody. It doesn't just belong to a few. It belongs to everybody, this thing called the Christ, which is Emmanuel, God within each and every one of us. I love Thomas Merton. He's one of my favorite reads at times. And he says, at the center core of our being, there is a point of nothingness that knows no sin and no illusion. It is totally, he says, possessed by God at the center point of this nothingness. Now we would say it is the essence of God. And it is within you and it is within me, the center point of nothingness. But what does he mean by that, the center point of nothingness, nothingness? See, for us to get there, which is what tonight is all about, there is a way, and the way has to be followed. And one of the greatest spiritual leaders that has ever stood amongst us, none to compare with that yet, is the master teacher Jesus. And he says that way is the way of self-givingness, self-emptiness. See, a point of nothingness means there's nothing there. So self-emptying is the way for us to get to that unified state of being, or what our Hindu friends would call Satchitananda, universal pure bliss. What Jesus calls the state of knowing and experiencing, I and the Father are one. All that the Father has is mine. And what we would say is, a connection, a unified connection with our source. It's all the one thing that everybody's saying anyway. All spirituality says the one thing, maybe in different ways and with regard to different rituals, but they're all saying the very one thing, because there is only one thing to say, because there's only the one life, the one mind, the one power, the one presence, and we're all interconnected in it and part of it, an integral part of it. And it's right where we are. So this thing, Emmanuel, this thing, God with us, is that still point, that silent point, that quietude within us, that point of nothingness, wherein all that is the true essence of you and me is in its pristine state and has not been touched by any thought, word, or deed of yours or mine. And our journey is to return back into that consciousness and to wake up again in it and to discover that we're not at all who we think we are. Far from that. So the challenge is self-emptying, and God knows it's not the way of the world as we know it, and it's certainly not the way of the Western world. We're more into filling up than self-emptying. We want to be self-filled, not self-empty. And that is why no one really got what Jesus was about. Not then and not now. No one gets truly what Jesus was about. The most radical teacher amongst us, and certainly he was the very first of his kind at his time in his surrounding area and in his culture. He was the very first non-dual master to present at that time. And nobody knew what to do with that. Nobody knew what to do with that. He could have said what Rumi said 900 years ago. Out beyond wrong ideas and right ideas, there is a field. I'll meet you there. And it's a field of consciousness, beyond duality. And this is what Jesus was bringing, this unified state of being through self-emptying and through taking care of, serving, and loving each other and all of the world too. Self-emptying. He emptied himself, we are told, and took upon himself a lesser experience so that all might have a greater experience. And that's not the way spirituality works in religion if you study it. Most spiritual leaders don't do what Jesus did. He was all about giving it all away and becoming smaller and smaller and smaller and less so that the power and the glory within him could increase. But what was becoming smaller? It was the egoic system of living that you and I are mostly engaged in, and the rest of the world too. It was to go beyond the egoic state of mind into that pure state of conscious being, outside of wrongdoing, right doing, wrong thinking, right thinking, and so on. Outside of the three things that keep us back from that unified state of being: judgment, condemnation, and criticism. And as long as you and I are entertaining any of those, we are in separation and we cannot be unified with the source of our being. Because we're into right and wrong, and we're into duality. And so consequently, we cannot be two-sided. We cannot be double-minded. You know, the scripture does say, if your eye is single, then your body will be filled with light. So if that inner awareness, inner consciousness is single, unified, then all of us will experience that sense of integration and at one-ment. So the challenge is there to self-empty. I love the story of the monk. It tells about a student that came to him, was looking for him for a long time, wanted to study under him because he was a very revered teacher. And so he eventually got an interview with the monk, with the holy man, And in the interview, the student went on and on and on about all of his experiences, his spiritual experiences, all of his studies, what he had done, what he had undertaken, all the philosophies he had, studied deeply, and on and on and on. And so after about enough of that, the monk just took up the teapot and poured himself a cup of tea, and poured the tea and poured the tea and poured the tea until the tea was spilling over. And eventually the young man stopped his monologue to say, "Stop pouring, it's full." And the monk put down the teapot and the teacup and said, "Yes, and so are you, so full that I have nothing to teach you. So full that I have nothing to teach you." You see, so for you and for me, this Christed message, this Emmanuel message, is about making a space to receive what we have been given, to make the space for that. And to make the space for that, you and I have to self-empty. It's not what we're used to. Indeed, it goes against the grain. As I say, we're used to filling up and filling up and filling up and filling up and filling up, until it makes no sense anymore, and all that we have filled ourselves with lessens in importance after a time. And so the call tonight is lighten up, lighten your being, by first and foremost lightening the thoughts that are going through our minds, which will consequently lighten the feelings, and consequently lighten our actions, because there is only one thing that has to happen for you and for me to live a fulfilled and wonderful life. And it is the realization that I am my own Redeemer, I am my own Savior, I am my own Guru, and I don't have to keep looking for that outside of myself. But if I choose to look within, I will be awed and I will be amazed by what I have and can discover. And the thing is, until we're in that unified state of being, all of us are seekers. All of us are seekers. And the Gospel of Thomas says, seek. If you are seeking, seek until you find. But don't be surprised that when you find, you're going to be troubled with what you find. And then that troubleness will move into wonder. And when you move into the wonder, then you will regain your state of sovereign being. So seek until you find that. And of course we're troubled. It's a strange kind of situation we're in when it comes to religion sometimes, especially. Now, all of us are obliged to be spiritual beings, whether we like it or not, because that's what we are in truth. We're not all obliged to be religious. But we are obliged to be spiritual beings, because there's an inner knowing within us that knows that we are more than we seem to be, more than we are. In fact, I was highly amused the other day. I was in a store and I picked up a plaque that said, "My wish for you is that you will become that awesome life that you pretend to be on your Facebook." You see? And all of us can learn from that. We're not all of that. We are so not all of that. No matter how great all of that is, or how awful all of that is, we are so much more than all of that. And what the thing that we are is and has nothing to do really with the external world. It has to do with the internal world, and yet that's where we're preoccupied, out there somewhere, out there. I like the story too of the young lady who was studying in her second year of nursing, and they were given a pop quiz by their professor, and he threw in an end question which puzzled them all, and it was, can you name the lady who cleans the school, who cleans the school? Can you name the lady who cleans the school? Do you know her first name? And some people thought it was a joke. And then at the end of the test, somebody said, "Are you going to grade us on this? Will our mark be affected by this?" He said, "Absolutely." And he said, "Why?" And the professor said, "Well," He said, we think about significant people in our lives sometimes. And one of those significant people in this establishment is the lady who cleans the establishment. And so absolutely, yes, she is as significant to all of us as anybody else in our life is. And so one of the girls who took the test said, my life changed ever after that day. I quickly found out that the lady's name was Dorothy. And I realized that everybody has a right and is entitled to be recognized, to be heard, and to be treated in a way that acknowledges that all of us are important and all of us are significant. And that's what Christmas is about. Oh my goodness me, if we here until next Christmas, if I only started in on the life of Jesus, just the 3 years we know about him, and the difference he made, and how he turned everything upside down and caused a great deal of discomfort. John the Baptist's disciples couldn't understand why, indeed, this man would have anything to do with John the Baptist, because he was a man who banqueted, he was a man who drank, he was a man who danced, and then the Pharisees and the doctors of the law abhorred him because he healed on the Sabbath, and he hung out with the impure of society, the hand-me-downs of society, and they didn't want to have anything to do with any of that. And so his own disciples didn't understand him at all either. And you can imagine, I remember as a small child saying, gosh, I wish I was alive and one of his disciples when he was around, because that would have been a great good thing. Well, I don't know that it would have, because they had to come to the recognition of who Jesus was and what Jesus was in their own way. And at that time, there was no history to say, oh, look, this fellow is going to be really famous for the rest of time. And in 2,000 years, they're still going to be going on about them. They didn't have any of that going for them. But there had to be something about Jesus that really caught their imagination. What would that have been? It had to be something about the power of the man's presence. There had to be something about him, the energy around him and so on, that was so amazing and extraordinary that no matter what, you couldn't help but be drawn to it. You just couldn't help yourself. And we always hear along in the scriptures, he spoke as one who speaks with authority. And so there was something about him, and yes, it was the Christ-conscious awareness, it was the Buddha mind, it was the unified state of being. That's what there was about him, and he upset everyone around him, including his family. Everybody was upset. And I can remember a well-known Irish poet and philosopher and theologian and Jungian psychologist being asked by one of his friends what he was going to give up for Lent one day. And he said, Lent, let me see. Okay, I think I'm going to step down and give up the focus on Christianity and the way it hones in on the Christology with regard to Jesus. I think I'm going to give Jesus a break. I'm going to stop being, rummaging around with regard to all the things I've been told that I should believe about him. And I'm just going to step back and just be open to the wonder of the man, the wonder of the entity, the awesomeness of all of that, and see if I can recognize in him what the woman at the well recognized in him and the disciples recognized in him and so on, so that I can have personal knowledge of this man Jesus and not just bookology or, the stuff that I'm fed. I want to have this personal experience of this entity Jesus. And he said he does this often. He steps down and steps back from any creed, any doctrine, any orthodoxy across the board, whether it's science or whether it's religion, whatever it is. He says, I step back from it. He said, I don't think you can sum up the world or the galaxies or anything else and say this is absolutely the certain thing, the truth, and so on and so forth. He said, because life is not like that. Life is a wondrous thing. It's an ongoing thing. It's an expanding thing. It's a changing thing. And it's always new and it's always different. And you have to have an open mind, not a mind made up when you want to live life out loud and you want to live life passionately and you want to be the livingness in life itself. And I actually agree with that kind of thinking myself, because life is too big to be confined by any definition. I don't care whose definition it is. Life is far too big to be confined by a definition, by an ideology, because remember, the unified state of being goes beyond thought, goes beyond thinking, goes beyond ideation. It goes into pure being. And within pure being, there is no content, none whatsoever. No content in pure being, in pure consciousness. There's just being. It's a sense and an awareness and an appreciation of just life as it is in all of its wholeness and completeness and fullness. So tonight is about grasping that within ourselves. We're not called as nations. We're not called as groups. We're not asked as countries to be our spiritual selves. We are individuated expressions of the Most High. We are called individually, one by one, to be all that we can be. And we're only asked to be ourselves. That's all. We're not asked to be anybody else or to cause anybody else to be anything other than themselves. That's what tonight's all about. The individualized expression of life itself showing up in creation as you, as me. And that's a phenomenal thing to even ponder as we work towards knowing it. That somehow or another, in spite of my bad self, I am the individuated expression of the divine. And that there is within me this pristine state that's never been touched by anything I've ever thought, anything I've ever done, anything I've ever said. But there it is for me to tap into at any one time. And so tonight's message is, as one of my teachers always used to end up every talk with, is honor yourself, love yourself, be good to yourself, because God dwells in you as you. And so the message of tonight is to each and every one in this room and everybody on this plane. If for some reason the divine took form and stood in front of you, the message would be, hail, full of grace. The Lord is with you. Blessed are you, because that which is mighty has shown up in you and done great things in and through and by means of you, and holy is your name. Worthy is your name. I am is your name. So stop calling yourselves by other erroneous names. Those names are not you. They are the illusionary you in life and living. Your name is hail, full of grace, worthy, cherished, loved, given to, adored by that which chose to show up by means of you. We celebrate the radiant light of life, which is truth itself. But not out there, up there, over there, in him or her, but in you. Christmas means nothing if it doesn't mean that. It means nothing if it doesn't mean that you have this wonderful sense of yourself as Emmanuel. You have this wonderful sense of yourself as amazing grace. You have this wonderful sense of yourself as an absolute essential aspect of the great I am. And that's what all the singing and the shepherds and the stories are about. And real truth never comes out of facts. It always comes out of a story. And the story is yours. And the story is yours in the making right now. So I recommend to all of us this week, we give ourselves a silent night moment. We give ourselves a holy night moment. And we decide for ourselves what this coming year, between this Christmas and next Christmas, is going to be for ourselves, because there's nothing barred. Because that which is mighty can do great things through you, and holy is that name, and that name is you, and so it is.
We invite you to experience Dr. Moira in person on Sundays. Our services are at 9 a.m. and 11 a.m., and childcare is available. Please join us. If you enjoy these messages and would like to make a donation to our center, please visit our website at redondocsl.org. Thank you for your support of this ministry.